A cool tech time and one of the last of the year where we get into talking about some of the cards that you're going to be using inside of 2023. Let's get into it, shall we? Being one of the cleanest and most amazing artworks in Yu-Gi-Oh! I definitely feel like Swords of Concealing Light and a few of these other cards that I'm going to mention today are just texts that you got to know coming around the corner. Not necessarily for the format like we usually do, but for the one that's coming, because that format is definitely going to have a lot of people playing, and especially with Manadome stuff coming out, Satellar Knights after that, it definitely is going to show a lot of different stuff. But for now, these cards are going to impact the meta. Swords of Concealing Light is the first card I wanted to talk about, simply because of its similarity to a card like Book of Eclipse. Now, why am I mentioning this card? Well, cards like Forbidden Lance, cards like Ash Blossom definitely stop Book of Eclipse, and while Ash Blossom can stop Book of Eclipse, it cannot stop Swords of Concealing Light. So therefore, if you're expecting to play this to basically play around Shangri-La and a lot of the zone locking effects, as well as the additional cards on the Kashtira board, obviously if you don't remember Shangri-La, it doesn't lose its effect to being Dark Ruler. Therefore, cards like Swords of Concealing Light and Book of Eclipse and Book of Moon and many more cards like Kaiju's, for instance, will be how you have to actually out this card, because you can't really Raigeki it because it will save itself. Very interesting and key to note, just because this will be a definite meta contender inside of that format, and additionally with stuff like Kashtira and Tearlament and all the other decks mixed in. Fluanderies is another example. Both of these cards are just going to be amazing, and not necessarily all of them can be wiped out with actual board removal, so sometimes you'll just have to interact with them in a different way, and Swords of Concealing Light is a really cool way. Additionally, with Kashtira monsters, if they get stuck with basically one on the field, they can basically be locked for multiple turns, because, well, if they don't have two monsters, they can't really tribute, and if they don't have the spell card Kashtira Birth, if you can remember, then obviously you have something kind of interesting there as well, because they're kind of stuck under the Swords of Concealing Light. Again, guys, they're both really good cards. They both lose the Forbidden Lance, in case you've forgotten what Forbidden Lance is. You'll definitely have to have a copy of this if you're planning on playing Kashtira, but Forbidden Lance is a really powerful card as well. And both of these lose to that, but this only loses to one card. This loses to two. That's why we're mentioning Kaiju's. To remove the Shangri-La, we've already mentioned that, so we're going to move directly along. Kashtira Big Bang is the next card that I really have to talk about, because a lot of people don't know that this is a loop inside of the deck, and it really only takes basic reading skills, but sometimes you just don't quite connect that endless loop. You just have to kind of read it and then say, oh yeah, I didn't notice that. If a Kashtira XYZ monster is on the field, make both players banish monsters from their field face down as they only control one. If this card becomes banished, you can target one Kashtira XYZ monster you control and add one Kashtira monster you own attached to it to your hand. Then you can special summon it from your hand. Now, I mentioned this card because if this card becomes banished, you can target one Kashtira monster it is an XYZ that you control and add one Kashtira monster you control that's attached to it, and then put it back in your hand and then spam it out on the field. I'm mentioning it because a lot of people don't know this, and I just wanted to mention that just to be a helpful hand. Each time something is banished, each time a card is banished, attach one banished card to this card as material. Therefore, if each time something is banished, and this is a macro on legs, then each time I can pick Kashtira Big Bang, attach it back to a Rise Heart, and then when I detach it, I can grab one of the cards, as long as it's still on the field, that is under it, and then put it back on the field. A lot of people don't know that, and that basically is not an infinite loop, but it definitely is a bit of a loop, a bit of a finite loop that your opponent can get stuck under. And if you have that kind of control of the board, and they can't Dark Ruler, you remember Dark Ruler doesn't do a whole lot. It'll do a little bit, but it won't do a whole lot. And it's your way to kind of play around. It's just a cool interaction. I definitely had to mention that. Last card I have to mention is Brain Research Lab. I mentioned it in a community page post the other day, simply because it's just a fascinating card, and it's been something I've been messing around with inside of the deck since they hit mine. I had been playing like set rotation and different stuff like that, and I'm even messing around with the next format just to see. I don't think I'll play a next format, but for right now, you know, that's an example, but that's next format's list. I'm talking about this format. maybe you want to consider it simply because during the main phase, the turn player gets an additional psychic normal summon. And inside of a deck with a bunch of psychics to do powerful stuff when they're normal summon, it's definitely something you might want to try. Guys, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. That's just a little bit of the text that I wanted to mention. Hope you're having a good time in this terrible format, and I'll see you next time. The captain is out. Arrivederci. Ciao bello.